My name is Johannes Kalliskand, and I'm Attaché for Scientific and University Cooperation at the Embassy in France in Austria. And today I'm very pleased to introduce with my colleague Jan Potra from Slovakia. Jan, are you here? Can you hear me?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Jan. So yes, I'm very pleased to introduce this second thematic webinar as part of your PhD in France webinar series. I would like to remind you that this is a joint project between the embassies and Campus France offices of Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. I see that many of you have connected, and I hope that most of you were able to follow the introductory webinar on the PhD in France last week. I just wanted to remind you of the scholarships offered by our embassies and by our respective embassies for students and researchers, young researchers in the respective countries. I have a slide to show you yes, this is the slide. Some of you saw it last week. So we have this 5 fellowships from each embassy. And today's webinar will be dedicated to the PhD in France in the specific field of human and social sciences. This field includes disciplines such as legal, language, political, economic, and management sciences. It will today feature 2 heads of French doctoral schools, respectively from the University of Grenoble-Alpes, with Mrs. Anne-Laure Amila, and from the University of Lorraine in Nancy, with Mr. Jochen Zonle. And also a former doctoral student, Mrs. Verena Weiland, who is assistant professor at the University of Vienna, and has done a co-tutel between France and Germany. So you will have the opportunity to interact with speakers by asking them questions in the Q&A window that you can see at the bottom of the Zoom window. And the speakers, our 3 speakers, will answer your questions at the end of this webinar. So finally, I would like to remind our speakers to turn off their microphones when they are not speaking. Thank you. And I now give the floor to Jan Potra and wish you an exciting webinar.
Thank you, Johannes. So we'll actually start this series of presentation with a presentation by Anne-Laure Amila from the École doctorale des sciences de l'homme, du politique et du territoire, based in the Université Grenoble-Alpes. So I leave the floor to you, Anne-Laure.
Hello, good afternoon to all. I will start by sharing the screen with you, and when this is done, we can get started. So I'm here on behalf of the director of that school, Véronique Bolland-Barrault, who could not attend, and I am just one of the teachers, professors of that university, and happens to also be in charge of one of the major labs in social sciences at Grenoble-Alpes University. I guess you want to know, I don't know where you start from in terms of knowledges of the French system. So we'll briefly introduce you to our university and then to the conditions to join a PhD in France and in Grenoble in particular in social sciences. So Grenoble-Alpes University is an attractive university in terms of location, as you can see on the little picture. It's a bit like Innsbruck in terms of surroundings. It's also normally a city that hosts over 60,000 students, out of whom 3,000 are doctoral students in all research areas. A lot of international students join at all stages, but very importantly at the level of the PhD. We have 300 doctorates in joint schemes with different foreign universities, and they are distributed within doctoral schools with very many doctoral specialities, all linked to research structures and units. What should I say? What more should I say here? Yes, there is a scheme in France which you've probably been acquainted to, or that has been mentioned to you before, which is called the co-tutelle, joint doctoral PhD, joint doctoral diploma, sorry. You do a PhD in between two universities, and at the end you get the two diplomas. This used to be quite tough and complex to get because of the French administration, which is not easygoing. But I must say that at Grenoble, at least, our international services have gotten very, very used to that, and we do manage more and more all over the world, and this is quite efficient now for people who want to do this. So this is the PhD, this is the PowerPoint prepared by my director. I usually do them a little lighter. But what you should understand is that the structure of the organization of a PhD in France. Well, the key, of course, person is yourself, the doctoral student, and that doctoral student has to find in social sciences a supervisor, and that relationship that is not necessarily binary, because there can be co-supervising within the scheme, organizational scheme of the PhD, but that binary or trinary relationship is essential. Meaning, if you come with you can come with a topic and discuss it with your supervisor, or you can contact a potential supervisor and try to engage a scientific conversation beforehand, and work together towards the building of a project. And in France, that works for all domains of science. We have two tiers in the organization of the university. Lecturers and full profs, and lecturers cannot officially supervise PhDs. This has to be under the responsibility of a person who has been entitled to get to the next step with an habilitation à diriger des recherches. It's a bit like the habilitation in Germany. However, there can be partnerships between somebody who has an habilitation and somebody who may have the actual speciality that you're looking for, who doesn't have it. This is linked to that doctoral supervisor is part of a research center, and generally you will find a lot of information on the websites of the research centers. The research centers are part of doctoral schools, and these doctoral schools are responsible for the attribution of the doctoral funding, and I will come back to that, and the general organization of the PhD within the university belongs to the doctoral college, but in general, the person who does the PhD, i.e. the doctoral student, and that goes back to the top of my slide, is not directly in relationship with that doctoral college. So, concerning our field, which is the doctoral schools on humanities, political and territorial sciences, I'll detail our functioning and the way we people get into PhD programs at that level. So that school covers 13 specialities, and these are titles that you will get your PhD into if you come to do it with us. Sociology, art history, sciences of education, political science, psychology, urban and regional planning, geography, clinical and pathological psychology, territorial science, science of the territory, which is a very French thing, but I don't have time to mention that. Comment, ergonomics, architecture. I think the interesting point here is that, and maybe I should have made the links, but you can ask me for more detail, is to go to the websites of the partner laboratories if you want information on potential supervisors or themes. And according to your specialities, I can actually tell you more and maybe add an additional slide that was not prepared for me, and I realized telling you approximately what specialities are organized in which laboratory. So it's quite a big doctoral school with 40 PhDs defended each year. So you don't really want to know about the defense, you want to know about the beginning. We are a humanities doctoral school that works with a majority of funded PhDs. Some of them are even privately funded, and with a special mention in France that is called CIF, that allows NGOs or private firms to invest into the financing, the funding of the salary of a doctoral student. So how do you get into it? Well, there is a call for doctoral funding that happens at the end of the university year, and the publicity is made on the doctoral school website. It's generally open in April, May, and it will be awarded in June, July. There's a first selection on the project, and then an oral conversation with the candidates in early July. So these are the ministerial, these are the funding attributed by the Ministry of Research of France. Apart from this, there are a number of other possible fundings. One of them is attributed by our university, and this generally happens in January. Right now, this is the competition is almost finishing in its phase of applications, and there are other possibilities too that my director didn't put here, which is another tier yet, which is called Laboratoire d'Excellence. And we have one on mountain dynamics and innovation, which is open in Grenoble. And they also have specific calls. These generally are also publicized on the doctoral college, on the doctoral school website. I don't want to be too long because I was awarded 10 minutes, but I will happily answer your questions if there are any. Basically, I would really insist, and this is me speaking more as a professor and the head of a research lab, I would really insist that a doctoral project is something that you don't do in 1 month, and generally to start a PhD in September, October of 1 year, you have to have started 1 year before to get your idea together, to find the supervisor, and then to be ready with the help of your supervisor to go funding hunting, and that can happen with funding from our university, with co-funding between at international level, and with funding from regional entities. There's quite a few possibilities, even if it's not a market of abundance, but for people who really wish to do a PhD with us and have great projects, we are very happy to make their projects move forward. I think that will be all for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Amila. I will now leave it to Johannes to introduce the next speaker. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Amila. We'll continue with our second speaker, but before he starts, I will just remind you that you can write your answers and interact after this webinar, and you can write your answers in the Q&A window. So
I would say you can start by asking your questions.
Yeah. You can start asking your questions. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So we continue with Mr. Jochen Sonle from the University of Lorraine and from the doctoral school SGPEC. Mr. Sonle.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm Jochen Sonle. I'm full professor in the University of Lorraine in France, in the eastern part of France. I have a German background, but I came to France when I was 20 years old. So I'm fully used now to the French system. I am the assistant director of our doctorate school, and I want to share with you 3 pictures or 3 slides in order to introduce you into our doctorate school. First picture, first slide I want to show you. These are the fields that are covered by our doctorate school. Economics, management, and aspects of law, such as private law, history of law, and public law, and last but not least, political science. So we have in our doctorate school, we have about 180 students that we prepare for the defense of their thesis, and we give also some education. As you know, perhaps in France, we have a specific system that is quite different from other countries where students or PhD candidates may write and work only their thesis. In France, we have a specific program, a parallel program, in order to give additional education and job preparation to PhD candidates. Each university and each discipline prepared a special program, and this is our program. So this is the next slide I want to share with you. So you see we have on the one side we have the thesis that has to be prepared, and here are 3 aspects that are in charge of our doctoral school. And PhD students, PhD candidates have to get 30 credits, 10 credits in each field to get during between 3 and 5 years of thesis. You know, in France, following the Bologna system, the thesis has to be finished normally in 3 years. In my research fields, it's quite longer traditionally. That's why we are relatively tolerant when the thesis takes about 4 or 5 years, since this is the tradition in our fields, and it's very difficult to get a job in a university when you write a thesis only in 3 years. In reality, the French system in my research fields, law, management, economics, political science, needs a longer thesis in order to get a job for an academic career. Just a few words on these 3 fields and these 30 credits doctorate or PhD students have to get. You have a first field that is valuation, scientific valuation. So PhD candidates get credits through publications, papers that are already publicated, through organizing themselves and being speakers during conferences, but also only through the participation, the passive participation without being a speaker, to conferences, but also stays or journeys in other research centers. You know, in France, it's very strange, but research centers are called laboratories. The vocabulary that comes from experimental science was taken for all research centers. So that, for example, we in humanities or in social science, our research centers in France are strangely called also laboratories, but these are research centers in reality. And every PhD student is affiliated to a specific research center in our university. And when you have a stay in another a research center in another center in France or in another country, you get credits also. Second field, this is what we call education properly. So we have some classes that are given in the discipline of the PhD candidate. If you write a thesis in law, you have some classes on methods, for example, on research methods in this discipline, and you get some classes. Then you have education or classes in other fields that can be pedagogical, taking the floor, how to take a floor, how to speak during a conference, and so on. This is scientific integrity. This is ethical behavior, how to write correctly a thesis, how to make footnotes, how not to plagiate other writings, and so on. And you get also credits for getting knowledge in other languages, or for foreign PhD students for following classes in French for foreign speakers. And then the last field is the preparation for the after thesis. So you have classes on a future academic career, how is organized the career, how to get a job in a university or in a research center after your thesis, but also how to get a job in the private sector, for example, in companies, and you get credits also for collective responsibilities. What does it mean, for example, when you are implicated, engaged in a student association or in an NGO? So when you have additional engagement in social activities. So this you get some credits in these fields also. So this is what is specific. In many countries you have only the thesis. In French we have an additional, and this is the raison d'être, the reason of being of a doctorate school. It's to give these education and to give credits to the students, and during their thesis the PhD students have to get the 30 credits. If not, they cannot defend their thesis. They need all these credits. So for finishing, I have just I give you just a look to our internet, onto our web page that exists also in English. So this is the name of our doctorate school. So if you search for École Doctorale or doctorate school, and this is our acronym for, in French it's for sciences juridiques, politique, économique et de gestion. So it's law, political science, economic, and management. And then you have an English version of our website. So this is our doctoral school. You have informations. You have the research units, because you have to know, it is what mentioned by my colleague a little bit earlier, how to become a PhD student in France. There are two ways. You look by your own for your future thesis supervisor, and you find it through a research unit. You have to go to the research units, and within the research units you find all the researchers that are allowed to supervise a thesis. Here again you have all the supervisors. Other possibility to become a PhD student, it's to respond to a call where of already funded thesis, and you find informations about fundings and PhD thesis proposals that have already a funding also on these websites here under these fields. So these are the informations of our doctorate school, and I am still available for your questions if there are some questions later. Thank you very much for giving me the floor and for having the opportunity to presentate our doctoral school.
Thank you, Mr. Sonde, for your presentation, for your interesting presentation of the doctoral school, and also this general presentation of the PhD at the University of Lorraine. So we already got some questions. I invite you to continue to ask your questions in the Q&A field. So we will continue with Mrs. Verena Weiland. Hello, Verena.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for being here with us this evening and to share your experience. I'll let you present yourself and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Johannes, for inviting me today. I am currently working as a postdoc at the University of Vienna at the Department of Romance Linguistics with special focus to French and Spanish linguistics. Before coming to Vienna, I studied French, German, and political science just after school at the University of Heidelberg in Germany. And at that time, my goal was to become a teacher. But after having finished my studies, I decided to do my PhD thesis in French linguistics. So I decided for a PhD thesis as a co-tutelle de thèse at the Universities of Heidelberg and Paris-Est. So why that? In Heidelberg, I was part of the Institute of Romance Linguistics, while in Paris, I got member of the École Doctorale Culture et Société. In English, this is the so-called doctoral school for studies of culture and society. So the most important advantage of being a PhD student at the University of Paris-Est was that I found my second supervisor there at this university, and that I could become part of the laboratory. We already talked about that. So I got part of the CEDITEC, Centre d'études de discours, images, texte, écrit et communication. So I found a really good context for doing my PhD thesis in this laboratory. And in my doctoral thesis, I worked on the topic of French discourse analysis. My purpose was to find or to create a new methodological approach in order to analyze public discourses. And I could not have been able to work on such a challenging topic without a supervisor in France. So how did I find my second supervisor? I met her at a conference. At the conference I attended right at the beginning of my PhD thesis, and there I got into conversation with her and asked her if she could maybe imagine a co-tutel, and yes, she was immediately yes, appreciated the idea.
Thank you, Verena. Yeah, we were very interested in your profile because you made this mobility in the frame of the co-tutel between Germany and France, and you're working as a assistant professor at the University of Vienna in the field of language sciences. Thank you for this presentation. I have some questions to ask you. A simple question. Why did you choose to apply for PhD, and why France? In France specifically?
Yes, I think that the central reason for the decision to do a co-tutel was that on the one hand, that I needed the connection to French university in order to be able to do my work, to do this work on my topic I had chosen. And the second reason was that I had spent a semester abroad in France, in Lyon, during my studies. And after these studies, I always had the idea or the desire to return one day to France for a longer period of time. And the third reason was that I stayed at the University of Heidelberg. So the university where I had already done my studies. So it seemed a little bit like a good idea or a desire to change at least a part of my working environment and make it more international.
And how was this working environment in France, in this so-called laboratoire de recherche? You worked in this kind of laboratoire. How was the team and the researchers? Did you have a good experience in?
Yes, it was a really great experience because the lab was really awesome. Was great. Was a great lab, especially because I didn't have such a group. I didn't have such a lab in Heidelberg. So I always had to work on my own at the University of Heidelberg. And the whole group in France met regularly for presentations, for events, for discussions. And once a year, all the PhD students of the laboratory met with all the professors, and everybody got together for 1 or 2 days in order to report and to discuss the current progress of each PhD student. And it was always really informal. For example, yes, we got lunch together, and we had a lot of time to discuss all the work in plenary and to help each other. Yes.
And did you present your thesis in both languages?
No, always in French.
Oh, only in French.
Yes, but I think that it would have been possible to present it in English, but I always chose to present it in French. Yes.
Did you have the choice, or?
I think we had the choice because there were also people from Asia, from Latin America. So I think yes, that it would have been possible. Yeah.
Okay. And did you encounter difficulties during your stay? Administrative difficulties? perhaps?
Yes. Sometimes it got a little bit difficult for the two supervisors to agree on specific aspects of my PhD thesis. Yeah, but we always managed this with many discussions and several meetings online, and yes, in Heidelberg and Paris. And I had some difficulties or challenges, I could say, at the beginning, right at the beginning in the organization, because I had to get students in both universities independently first, and then we had to organize and to enroll a contract between the two universities. Yes, so that was a little bit challenging.
And did you have a fellowship also from Germany or France?
Yes, I had two fellowships, one from Germany and the other from the how is it called, Université Franco-Allemande.
UFA. Okay,
yes,
that's very important.
So I had like a scholarship and this mobility fund. Yeah.
But not from the DAD, because I've heard also that the DAD gave this kind of fellowship for PhD students.
Yes, I think that would have been possible, but yeah, I never tried.
Okay, thank you. So, what are your plans in the future? Do you have plans in France, perhaps?
Yes. So, now I have a very international profile. I could imagine working in France one day. So I think the international profile is really important, or is really relevant for example, working in international institutions in the context, yes, the political context, and maybe, or another possibility after my contract in Vienna, which has still 2 years to run. I could also imagine working at a French university. So I'm now able to work at a French university. I have the right to apply with my cogitaire. So this would be a nice opportunity in 2 years, maybe. Yes.
And for the end, how could you describe your experience in one sentence? So your experience with France.
In one sentence. Yeah, I think it was
one word.
A pillar. It was a central pillar, yeah, of my PhD thesis. Yeah.
Thank you, Verena, for this presentation and for asking my questions.
Thank you.
Now we'll continue with the Q&A questions.
So we'll start with some of the questions that have been asked in the list of questions. Sorry, so the first question is regarding something you said, Professor Zonle, which is that during the PhD training, it's required to follow international conferences, and that in order to have international publications. So the question is whether conference and publications in national languages can also award credits, or if it has to be international.
No, it has not to be international. It depends on the fields. You know, there are scientific fields where you have to be very present in other languages, especially in English, in other fields, especially in mine, in law. It's not required to publish in other languages and there are, since it's mainly a national discipline, it's not required to publish internationally. So we give credits for both, for publications and participations or presenting papers in national conferences and in international conferences. There's no difference, and it's very specific to each discipline, to each scientific discipline.
If I may add, international doesn't mean English. So you can be international in Chinese, you can be international in German. There's a language spoken at least in 2 countries as the official language, and in many more. You can be international in French and publish in Belgium or in Canada. But yes, you have to be international. There will be conferences that will happen in our own country and that will host people from abroad. I don't think research today can be thought of as non-international.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, the question that was asked. Another question is regarding the way a potential PhD student can find a subject of research. So I'll give one element of answer, which is that, which is from our general webinar. As we say, there is a list of research topics proposed on the site, on the website of Campus France, and there's also one on the website of Association Bernard Grégory, which we mentioned last week. But Mrs. Amila, for example, like, I mean, you can probably add that there are available subjects proposed by your doctoral school.
Well, this it doesn't really work at the doctoral school level in humanities. It works discipline per discipline. So there are in every discipline, in political science, in architecture, in sociology, in geography and planning, there are some liste de diffusion forums online that where people who have projects, funded projects, will offer their PhDs. And this is all through the world. So in geography in France, it's called GeoTamTam. There's Association Française de Sciences Politiques and so on and so forth. So I think it's important that it's really important that you cannot really prepare a PhD project on your own. You have to go and see a professor in your home country, work with them, ask them where they get their information from, and then get started. I'm afraid we would love to have this, but there are so many PhD offers every day that we don't have the staff and it's at local level to register them all. So it works per discipline in terms of calls. Then the other thing that I would like to say is that there is really two types of PhDs in social sciences and humanities. One is the first type is the classical type, is that you come with a topic, with a subject. It may not be totally furbished, but then it will be done. That will be done with the help of the supervisor, and you look for funding, or you just answer a call because there's a flash project for 3 years and they need a PhD and they have a ready-made topic and that can suit you. So these are two very different ways of doing. If you don't have a previous idea, well, you go for these calls. But I would say that in social sciences and humanities, it's not just like the next hire and you go there like you would get into the next master program. It's really something personal that you will be working on. You will get very obsessive about your topic. So you don't just get something, go to the idea that a professor gives you because it sounds great on the spur. You really have to give it a really profound thought and work on it and read on it before you engage into the topic. It's really better to take 1 year before of thinking about your project and do a great PhD than to rush into it. And the other thing that I very much agree with my colleague Jochen is that we normally a PhD is supposed to last only 3 years in France. In social sciences, they usually last 3 to 5 years. So there are lots of people also who have projects, research projects, and they are looking for research assistants. So one of the good ways of working it through is to be recruited as a research assistant for 1 year, brush up your PhD project with your potential supervisor, and then go for the grant.
This is actually another question that was asked, which is how do you usually, or how do prospective students fund PhDs that last more than 3 years, since typically grants are 3 years long?
Well, there is another thing that we didn't say, so this is another interesting question, is that in your PhDs also usually get some teaching load. That is, if they are funded, that is paid on top of the research stipend. And this is very much recommended because most of the careers in the academy are not research only, they are between research and docency. Teaching, so you have this has to be something on your CV. So what people do for the 4th and 5th year is that they get a university teaching contract, or which is called ATER, yeah, specific contracts in France, or they get they can get money from a research grant that their supervisor or their colleagues may have. And is the PhD grant mandatory? Well, it used to not be mandatory to be funded to enter a PhD, especially in social sciences and humanities. I cannot answer for the whole doctoral school because some of the labs do still take PhDs without funding, but at the research center that I run, we don't accept PhDs that are not funded, or with the exception of people who already work, meaning if you're working, for example, for an international organization and you want to do a PhD as an expert, if you're already working as a high school teacher and you want to do a PhD, that's very fine if you have an international scholarship also, but we don't want McDonald's or junk jobs PhDs, because these will last for 10 years and then people will be very resentful with the system because they won't manage to do a good PhD. So we rather encourage people to work before on their topic, take the time, do some research assistancy somewhere, and then come back with a great project and be funded. The academic universe today is tough. It allows people in. It's really interesting, but it's highly competitive. So you want to get into it with the best options. And there was another question asking if the cultural and social anthropology was represented. It is not in Grenoble. This is the one social science that we are missing. It exists in Lyon, it exists in Paris, it exists in many places, and we would love to have it, but for the moment we don't.
Okay, so in that respect, I will actually just remind Gloria Horn, who asked the question, that on the Campus France website, in addition to the list of proposed PhD subjects, you can also find a list of doctoral schools. So that might help you find one that covers cultural and social anthropology in France in general. So I would like to thank you all once again.
Mr. Zonle wanted to say something, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Just, I wanted just to add for the duration, 3 or 5, between 3 and 5 years, in a not official way, we have 2 types of theses. Those candidates that will become a university job, get a university job in the French system, then I think you have to take more time because you are in competition with the others. And normally the thesis is of a better quality when it takes 5 years rather than 3 years. In the other type of thesis is when you not want to follow a career in the French academic system. It's completely sufficient to finish a thesis in 3 years. So a thesis can be finished in our fields also in 3 years. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. So we have an additional question which just arrived. Very natural question about funding, which is whether a doctoral student should contact, I guess, their future supervisor with a plan for funding, or if the doctoral school will help finding grants or funding in one way or another after they're accepted. I don't know who wants to answer this.
I can, or whatever.
Sure. Well, both of you have something to say, so.
Okay. Well, you have a funding, that's fine. It's great. The supervisor will be all the more happy. But generally, it's the job of the supervisor to help you find the funding. And of the doctoral school, but the doctoral school is more there to organize your PhD and during the course of the PhD, but everything that happens prior to it and the gathering of the funding is more relies more on the shoulders of the supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Zonlet. Do you want to add something?
Yes, since Anne-Laure mentioned also, you have two ways, and I mentioned it already also, you have two ways to become PhD students. You apply for a call and you have already a funding. There's a selection procedure and the best candidate gets the topic. So you have already a topic, a funding and everything. The second way, as Anne-Laure mentioned also, you look for a supervisor, and the supervisor can make a proposal for a financing, for a funding of the thesis. So it depends on the two ways to apply to a already fixed topic with funding, or to get in touch with a future supervisor to fix together with this supervisor the topic, and then looking for funding together with this person, with your supervisor.
Okay, so thank you very much for these additional elements. I will have to close this event today. Thank you again to all the participants, Mrs. Amila, Mr. Zonle, Mrs. Violent. Thank you to all participants as well. The recordings to all webinars you will be able to find on the Facebook pages of the different Campus France offices in all countries, and I'll share right away the addresses of these pages and the contact information for the Campus France offices in your countries.